So hopefully we have been on point so far and have introduced a good number of concepts and features and functionalities and expanded a little bit of what you've known with some of now what is new with what Lee has been contributing. As part of this community, what I want to make very clear is that it is an open community where we allow collaboration from many groups, and so if you have software that you also want to contribute to the overall community and to the platform, we're very open to that. We want to see that happen. We want to facilitate that as best as possible, and so to do that we have a number of ways that you can collaborate and work with us in the process of generating whatever it is you have, whether it's just an idea or development resources or you're a developer yourself. We hope to lay out a way for everyone to be able to contribute. So for those of you who are online, we're going to do the only live example. I hope you know that other classes had homework. We were the cool teachers, no homework. But what we do have is a bit of a working example. So we'll see how many of the software developers who self-identified at the beginning can follow along. What I'm going to ask you to do is head over to github.com/Odyssey. Now, if you're not a current GitHub member, I encourage you to sign up right now and become one. And then what we're going to look for you to do is two things. So for me, it's a little bit different because I'm already there. If you go to github.com/Odyssey, this is the repository or the organization in GitHub that has all of our repositories. All 101 repositories. Lots of software, lots of projects, old and new, all available here for your consumption. You can become a member and have access to certain repos when everyone determines that you're trustworthy and be able to commit directly. You could create your own projects and pull requests and forks based off of our different repositories. So for example, if I come in here and search the repositories, I'd like to ask that people search for, let's say, Atlas, and you'll see Atlas come up. How many people already have a GitHub account? How many people are creating them as we speak? The remaining people are wrong. Okay. So, what you can do once you're on any of these repos is you can hit the watch button, you can hit the star button, and I encourage you to do both. That both will raise the visibility of these projects and also make it easier for you to get back to them in the future after you leave and have been blown away by all the great stuff from this symposium. This will just make it easier for you to get back to the contribution part. You could also go and check out, if you would like, the Web API. So if you search for Web API, these being two of the components we have talked about at length so far today, from here you could do the same, watch and star the Web API project, and again, make it easier to get back. For those who aren't familiar with GitHub, the brief answers to what it is: source control. It allows us to track issues. It allows us to manage our projects, manage our releases, collaborate on our code, and do code reviews. So it is the way that we ask everyone to collaborate if their intent is to contribute code, or if you have a feature you want to see. You could go to Atlas, for example, and post an issue and say, I really wish I could do X. And then that will be something that's in the list of things that people in the community will see, will likely comment on, and then you will see implemented over the course of some period of time. Any questions about GitHub? Okay. Additionally, we have forums. So if you are not yet a member of the Odyssey forums, An easy way to get to them is to go to OHDSI, OHDSI.org, which is our main site. From there, if you go to the top, you'll see the forums link. And that takes you into our forum system. There's a specific developers community where you'll see most of the topics and discussions related to the architecture and software development here. We welcome everyone join, register here. I believe you could even register with your shiny new GitHub account if you don't want to create your own new Odyssey credential. And then you could participate in the conversation in our forum as well. If you want to go and create a post, if it lets you right away, tell us what we're missing. We could read them during the lunch break. But ultimately, just so you're aware that it's there and how to contribute. We also have a wiki. Again, easiest way to get there, start at odyssey.org. And at the top, actually, it's at the top of all of the sites, but you could just click and get into the wiki. The wiki has additional documentation. It is a little bit confusing. We have some wikis in GitHub. We have a wiki here. We have forums. But generally speaking, everything seems to make its way around and then is discussed in the working groups. So you could find your preferred way to communicate and collaborate. Forums are for more real-time-ish stuff. The wiki is for more permanent documentation or artifacts that we create as part of our projects. Slack. Somebody brought it up in the Wednesday session that one of the things that would enable our community is if we had a Slack channel. We had a Slack channel. We still have a Slack channel. Here's our Slack channel. Please come chat on Slack. If you're not a member of the Slack channel and you want to get an invite, you could shoot me an email and I will send you an invite. There are a number of groups and institutions that have automatic registration enabled, but it is limited and a little bit locked down. Because everybody wants to get in, we can't let everybody in. But the people who have attended today received free admission to the Odyssey Slack channel. Again, just let me know, and I will be able to add you. I guess what I could do here to make it easy is type my name in black ink on a black background. I don't want to make it too easy. Works. This is how they do redacted stuff at the FBI. I saw a documentary on it. Oh, please screen share. Don't go slow now. Come on. That's my email. You can shoot me an email. I will add you. That's my Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, whatever. But let me know you were in the architecture tutorial, you'd like to join the Slack channel, and if you're somebody who likes to be on Slack, you could join us on Slack. Admittedly, it is relatively quiet. We do have integration with GitHub set up with our Slack channel. So by joining the Slack channel all by itself, I have it on my phone. Whenever somebody commits comments or anything, I get a little notification. So that's one neat way that the Slack channel can help. So ultimately, the reason we have any of these things is because we want to try to encourage everybody to get involved. The development and the features that we're going to develop are not limited to just my ideas or any individual's ideas. We really encourage everyone to bring their ideas to the table, what they'd like to see, and we will try our best to facilitate including those features into the software architecture in the way that will best benefit you, or at the very least help you down the road to implementing them so that you can benefit from the architecture itself. Any questions about the collaboration or GitHub, forums, wikis, Slack channels, how we try to work together as a group. No. Okay, great. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Sigfried to talk about how we can be behaving as a community and using some of these tools and just sharing our ideas, how we could make an impact on the healthcare system overall.
Okay, so this is a genuinely open community, and it's pretty incredible that we can have this room, yesterday of 450 something people, and people doing really important stuff, and still having it be really open. But if you want to develop new tools in the OHDSI stack, they will be welcome. That said, we have to do certain kinds of work so that they can be welcome, so that they can fit, so that we can take advantage of what each other has to contribute. And I want to talk a little bit about how important that is, and then a little bit about what we do so that we can all benefit from the contributions that we all make. So the importance of this is not just OHDSI. There are other common data models. So what's really important are common data models and the software built on them, and that software be available to people. And I think we've talked a lot about various benefits, but just to emphasize a couple of them. Once you've got CDMs, you have faster research cycles because people are not wasting huge amounts of time getting all of their data into the format so that they can do their research. They did it. You bought it in that format, or your IT department did it. So when you're ready to do your research, your first step is not the 6 months of getting your statisticians and programmers to put it all in shape. You get validity by replication. Other people can do what can run your code. Validity by coordination and aggregation across research networks. So I think other people have talked a lot about that. By simultaneously running multiple treatment and outcome combinations, performing p-value calibration. So besides having CDMs, the advantages of open source software platforms, transparency in what we're doing, and more importantly maybe is the legitimacy in setting standards. So the stuff is, we want to solve research problems. We want doing healthcare research on the basis of patient records. It's been around for a while, but the methods are not well established. It's developing fast. So if we want everybody to be able to do this research and have agreed upon ways of doing this research, we have to have some legitimacy in our standards so that they get adopted. If a single company says this is what you should do, it's not going to mean as much as if we've got the kind of diversity that we've got in this community saying this is the way to go, especially if we're able to bring along the people in the other CDMs, which is, maybe like a, can't we all get along kind of wish, but I believe we're going to get there. The other thing is that once you've got open source software that works on CDMs, even experimental work can leverage functioning systems with real users and real use cases. So for me, as a visualization developer, I'm able to do something that people developing these kind of techniques have never really been able to do before. Because in the past, when you want to develop a new technique, you find your subject matter experts, you get data from them, you munge it into some format, you do your research, they look at it, it's really great, you publish your paper and you have to throw it all away because that data is not going to work for anybody else and that code's not going to work on any other kind of data. And even if it does work great, it's not connected to the systems where they got the data and where they want to put the data. So once you've got that open source platform, you can build your totally experimental, weird other thing into that platform so that people who already have a workflow, already have data, can try it out. They can give you feedback. You can improve it. This is really different from how stuff has been done. So about the getting all the data in and everybody reinventing the wheel, redoing their methods. This is from another talk I gave. I've just tried to estimate how much money is wasted on people doing research on health records without CDMs. So we've got clinical researchers working on comparative effectiveness and outcomes research, et cetera. Maybe there's 10,000 of them doing, plus another 20,000 programmers and support people at, say $100 billion and $90 billion wasted. God knows how much at the government I couldn't even quite estimate. And then in hospitals and healthcare systems. So overall, I'm estimating $2.5 gazillion per year wasted on people not working with CDMs. So the vision for the future is that any organization, and with all of us, it can, I think there's the idea that it could even be citizen researchers who have analytic tasks, research tasks to be performed on patient data. They should have access to free open source tools that solve the most common of these tasks, and that provide a platform for solving the more unique problems. So nobody doing this kind of work or research should be reinventing these kind of wheels. The ETL, people shouldn't have to write their own ETL from a data format that already exists. All the data quality checks, lots of people have written those. Nobody should have to figure out what data quality to do because tons of work has already been done. Population characterization, phenotyping, effect estimation, patient level prediction, the replication, aggregation, and publishing of results. And then my favorite, the visualization, so that all these functions can start becoming intuitively accessible to researchers. Because it's hard right now. It's hard to use these tools. So, as I said, my belief is that CDMs are important, open source is important. I've hitched my wagon to OHDSI because it is sort of the only game in town. We are not the only ones with an open source CDM. We're not the only ones with open source software, but we're the only people who have open source CDM and software and a large, diverse, active developer community. So if you want to build new stuff for those other tools, you have to get yourself into that organization. With us, you have to, get on the phone call, post to the forum, make a pull request on GitHub. I mean, the barriers to entry here are as low as they can possibly be. This is too important to be controlled by one organization, including us. Or one programming language or JavaScript framework. Right now, if you do want to take advantage of all of those pre-existing tools, then, and it's web-based, well, either it's methods, you're going to put it in R, or it's API stuff, and we're starting to get to the point that you can really do some API stuff without attaching to web API, although some of the, authentication, newer aspects of web API, you will have to do web API. But Frank's looking into Swagger. I think the API level stuff is going to be a lot more open and a lot more flexible pretty soon. On the front end, I know nobody raised their hand for front end, but that's where I think most of the important work needs to be done because people need to understand these tools. And these tools, the vocabularies, the cohort definitions, they are not easy to understand. I mean, the biggest obstacle we're going to face in adoption is going to be that people just throw up their hands and learn, I don't know how to get my ICD-9 codes in that format. And then, people need training, but the training takes a long time, and a lot of people might give up before they even get the training. We need really great front ends. And a lot of the data problems are just pretty hard. You need to have that interface between someone with real clinical knowledge and a very complex, quickly interactive representation of the data that can go back and forth with the knowledge of that clinical person. So doing development in this community is important. There are a lot of problems to solve. The impact is enormous. We have a place to do it. Eventually, maybe this will expand. But for now, I mean, this is a great place. This is fantastic. So in order for the tools that we build in this open community to continue having importance and to pave the way for a future in which when a research problem with medical records is solved, it has to be solved once, not by everybody who wants to solve it. They all do their own thing. Sorry, let me. To pave that ground, we need to remain open, but we also need to remain unified or become unified. I don't know if we're quite unified yet. I mean, insofar as we're building Web API and Atlas, there's sufficient unification. I mean, lots of people contribute to those, and it's well organized, and Frank is a really great dictator. And when he dies, I guess there will be a huge struggle for dominance among whoever's left. But for now, we're living in some sort of Web API Atlas utopia. But as Frank said, those tools are already getting kind of crusty. And so there are developers like me. I'm kind of the worst example of not following this advice because I'm off in my own world developing open source, experimental tools that are not fitting into this because I needed to use other tools. And Greg is going to come talk, and we've made similar tool choices. In fact, I've modeled some of my tool choices on his with the idea that even though we're not integrated yet, in this future when people decide to migrate to other tools, we'll at least have a better chance that we'll be able to start integrating the things coming from different directions. But what we as developers need to do is we do need to innovate. We need to build new APIs, new user interfaces. We need to do machine learning and methods development. We need to handle scale, which, do this with huge amounts of data, which I don't know if anyone outside of the commercial environment can start to do yet. And I think later on, Frank, you're going to be talking about the application data structure standards. Yeah. So when Frank talks about that, pay really close attention because that's going to be the thing that really unifies us. So we need to innovate, but not alone. And if you are making tools like me that are not easily integratable into the OHDSI stack, use those tools that we're starting to develop so that you are following the app level standards, not just the CDM standards, but the more complex like concept set standards, cohort definition standards. Once we start integrating results from multiple analysis runs, that'll involve a set of standards. So use those. Come to the architecture call. Reuse as much of other people's code as you possibly can. So I had a conversation as I was sitting here this morning, about, well, how do I do the ETL from, I've got Truven data, but nobody's publishing their ETL for that. I'm like, no way. Jansen's got Truven data. Are you telling me that they just solved the problem for themselves and didn't? So it's not easy to find the stuff necessarily, but it's out there. Jansen has published their ETL. If you can't find it, and you think maybe it would have been good for somebody to make it, post to the forum and make sure that it's really not there, because there's a good chance it is there. So reuse what you can and make your stuff open source. I know there are people who are making money as vendors in this stuff, and Greg's going to make some money, but he's building all sorts of code and making it open source. Lee, I think, also, and I sell my own services. If you want to hire me, you just hire me to build open source code. It goes on GitHub and people use it however they want, but I'm not trying to sell anything else other than just like pay me to keep doing cool development. But if you think that Atlas or Web API can't solve your problem, which is a good possibility, you might have a problem that those don't easily solve, and so you need to solve it in-house, please think about how are you going to share your solution back with other people? How can you make it so that your solution doesn't reinvent a ton of wheels? Because there's probably 20 problems that you're going to have to face that somebody solved already. So how do you take advantage of that? It's not going to be fun to come to the architecture call. It's sort of like going to the dentist, but please come to the architecture call, get on the forum, let people know what you're doing, find out what they're doing. That's it. That's my sermon.
What I'd like to encourage people to do, first, we do have about 10 minutes left now, so we can answer some questions now if there are any. During the break, if we're totally missing the mark on some topic that I haven't mentioned we're going to talk about in the afternoon, or we haven't covered this morning, please come and tell me, and I will make sure that we at least address it in some way. If we're perfectly on the mark, then just enjoy your sandwiches and your lunch, and we'll get back together afterwards. But for now, we do have 10 minutes, so if there are any questions for any of the faculty at this point, I'll take some questions. If not, you're welcome to start down to the lunch line. Sandwiches and such are outside. One major takeaway is the Docker-based deployment and the way Lee's done things with Broad C. One of the things historically we've done is try to limit complicating the architecture by adding in new tools or services, because it was already complicated enough. Now, that being said, our goal going forward is to simplify the deployment by using things like Docker, where it is a complicated challenge for your organization to adopt, because most organizations are now getting comfortable with this idea of cloud computing and container services. And so as people are comfortable with that, we'd like to provide things that fit easily into that channel so that you could say, yes, they have these following containers that are there for the complicated things, and for easier things, yes, you could deploy them out fine. But this approach is going to simplify our method of deployment for our tools, and as Greg says, across the stack of everything that you could potentially use, it does get complicated. So this is a nice way to be able to do that. My goal for next year will be that you could do one Docker pull, Docker start, and you'd have the entire OHDSI stack up and running. Now, I don't know that that's scaling or anything else, but it would still give us a much better deployment feeling than what we have today.
I just wanted to jump on this. So if, or a pin to my sermon, we need better infrastructure for people to have an easier time deploying. We need to make a lot of things easier for people to do, but especially deploying. To get the vocabularies running and even a synthetic data set, you've got a lot of work in front of you. So if you're from an organization that's got some money, one thing you could do is pay somebody to do this. That wouldn't be me because I'm not an infrastructure guy.
Yes. So we're not gonna turn this into how do we fund everything OHDSI does, but it is the case. Like we're gonna talk briefly this afternoon about like right now there is a demo environment out on the OHDSI website, but it's gone from like it's a playground, and then other people are like, oh hey, I was working with a partner and they went and checked it out, and it seems like there's just garbage in there. It's like, well, yeah, it's just our demo environment. And they're like, what if I really want to do a for real study? Can anybody just go in and edit it in that environment? Well, yeah, it's just a demo environment. So we're going to talk this afternoon a little bit about how do we make a production version of the public tool set so that everybody can work there if they want to, do real research, and not only just deploy to like a dev environment or a QA environment as well. Could take one or two more questions.
Talking about production, the Docker environment is great, but it's very often talked to developers. To what extent do you think the Docker is fit for production use? To get up things, to get a step in the door in a hospital, with different departments setting up in a multi-tenant environment. So this is your study in the thing, and maybe next time you do it in the bigger CDN. So to what extent is Docker fit for production?
So what I'll say, and anyone else can comment as well, but I have received a mandate that the only way that we start recommending that a Docker deployment strategy be what we recommend is for Janssen will be fully on a Docker-based deployment strategy, eating the dog food of OHDSI before we suggest to anyone else that they do it. That being said, I could tell you in working with the enterprise IT group within Janssen and J&J more broadly, they're behind that strategy. They have scanning techniques for security on Docker images. They have existing relationships and legal contracts in place with AWS. And if you have that with Google Cloud or you have that with Azure, deploying these Docker containers it's like the new cool, this is how we're going to do it thing. I can tell you as a developer, it's been amazing for my productivity. But from everything I'm hearing from the enterprise side, they're very behind the idea of a modular deployment-based strategy using container services as a production way to deploy things. So it seems good, but I'm happy to hear opinions to the counter. Share CDM level data, like patient level data. Personal opinion, no. One of the things I'm familiar with, just based on conversations I've had with people in the industry, and there's been a lot of research done by MIT. They have a book out, which is really a collection of papers about how to deal with data and trust. A lot of their focus, at least, appears to be on the idea of distributing a standardized analytic without requiring people share data, encouraging potential security risk, especially when it comes to patient-level data sets. So not saying it's impossible, but from what I've seen, and what I believe at least at this point, is the idea of a standard analytic being distributed to people who are data owners and then sharing those results seems to be the way that most people would be willing to participate in studies. And what's interesting is everything I just said, while it may sound like it was like specific OHDSI speak, that was based on research that was done in the telecom industry. And what they're talking about is sharing cellular usage data and how to optimize networks. They want to distribute standardized analytics so people don't have to share their the cell phone data and their network usage data. But in this MIT, the book on the MIT book, I have a copy of it here. I think I could show you, but it's all about prototyping they're doing in the. It's about prototyping he was just looking up the book, and they have an audio version of it. Anyway, so they did all of this in the telecom space, and then from there they're like, oh hey, we could actually apply this to healthcare space too. And it was kind of like an oh hey moment for them, and I was like, yeah, by the way, we kind of do stuff where we're trying to generate standardized analytics and data models and share it. And it leverages blockchain, which is cool, so it's got to be good, right?
In many cases, it's actually dictated by regulations, regulatory compliance. So, European data privacy laws or U.S. laws. So that.
I don't have high confidence that data privacy is going to open up to the point where everyone's going to be allowed to send their patient-level data around to everybody else anytime soon, even encrypted.